this is my demo of note blocks. The idea here was just to test out how to create a song from note blocks, to try to test the limits of where you could hear it from, making a compact system for having a lot of notes, and also doing chords. So first thing to do was pick a song to use. I chose Chopin's Prelude in C minor, mainly because of a couple of reasons. First of all, almost every note in the song is the same duration. That's one of the big limiters to note blocks, the fact that you can't actually set a sustain on the notes. So it helped a lot that you have the same pattern in every single measure in this particular prelude, and the intervals are the same. So for the fourth note and fifth note of each measure, where they're half the duration of all the other notes in the measure, you can kind of fake it by decreasing the amount of time, the amount of pause between the notes striking. And it kind of, to the ear, it kind of fakes the sustain, so that worked pretty well. The other reason that I chose that particular song is that it has it's almost entirely bounded into the 2-octave range that the note blocks in Minecraft allow you to use. There are only a few places where the chords actually stretch beyond that range, and as you'll see in the setup below, I just simply dropped those notes from the equation. So first of all, how does it sound? The idea was to make it something you could listen to while you're enjoying the lake, watching the cows run around, or the golems. Now while it's playing, we'll run downstairs and have a look at the setup. The block down here is because before the door was up at the top, we had a little mishap where somebody accidentally let water come down the stairs and it knocked out a bunch of the redstone. So this is the wire coming from up above, from the button that we pushed up in the middle of the lake. And you can see it comes over here to a starting point where, of course, I had a button so I could test this out as I went. The first row of repeaters here was to make it so that the button click sound is done before the song starts, so you don't get a button click in the middle of it. And what you're going to see is that this very evenly patterned prelude is divided into measures, and in my setup you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets of notes per measure. It's essentially a chord progression. So we get to the first chord, and we've got 4 note blocks. They are connected by a single block of dirt that gets charged, and of course you could use dirt here, you could use wool, you could use air, except for then it doesn't charge the top block, but essentially you just need one of those types of blocks here, and then beneath each of the ground blocks, so that you get the piano sound. Of course, if you did it with stone or wood, you'd get a drum or a bass guitar sound. So the concept's pretty simple. This little setup is a chord. The redstone charge comes in here, pulses once, and sets off the chord. And of course, I just set the note blocks to the different notes that were within the chord. You can also see that there's space above here. This is pretty important because when you're setting the note blocks, you can't actually hear it being set if there's not some air up above there. So as you right click it and you're cycling through to move it 21 clicks or 18 clicks to get to the note that you want, you can't actually see that you're doing anything to this one. And I find that when I'm trying to count those clicks, it helps quite a bit. So standard setup, I've got a chord, then I have 3 repeaters that are set at 3 ticks and the next chord, 3 repeaters at 3 ticks and the next chord, and then because I'm going to have 2 half notes, I've got 2 repeaters set at 3 clicks and the half note chord, and then I have 2 more repeaters, and this time one of them is set at 3 clicks and one is set at 1 click, and then I have the final chord of that particular measure. Then I've got a set of 4 repeaters, each set at 3 clicks, and then I have the next measure. And you'll see as we wander down this way that once again I have a set of 5 chords, same repeater pattern, same interval in between, then 5 more notes, 5 more chords for the next one. Down at the end there, you can see the repeater pattern again for the pause in between. Here come 5 more, etc. Now, that little island that we looked at is pretty much directly above us right here. You can hear a note block from about 40 or 44 blocks away. So ideally, what I should have done was patterned this out so that the points in the prelude that get louder and softer are further and closer from the point where you're supposed to be sitting and listening to the song. It actually worked out that way fairly coincidentally, but I didn't actually plan it ahead as much as I should have. But it's very important. If I had just actually taken each of these measures, I believe there are 13 measures total. If I had taken them and just kept running all the way down and dug out more and more chamber for each measure, eventually they would get far enough away that I simply couldn't hear it. In fact, if I trigger this, if I start this playing and then I am at one end or the other, you won't actually hear the notes being played at the opposite end. It gets too far away. So you could solve this problem for longer songs by doing a couple of things. You could either do more of a spiral pattern for your measures, so that if you're staying stationary, you're at least not having the notes traveling away from you. Or of course, another option is that there are 2 measures in this song that are completely repeated, and it would have made sense to potentially just put in a looping mechanism to play those measures twice as needed, but then be able to use fewer note blocks. If you think about it, at the most, some of the measures have most of the chords are 3 notes. Because of the reduction, when something goes outside of the 2-octave range, every once in a while I have 1 note or 2. And there are a couple places where there are actually 4 notes in the chord, because all 4 fit into the 2-octave range. So on average, there's 3. There's 5 chords per measure, so I'm using 15 of those. So you can do the math. This thing gets pretty big pretty fast for what is essentially a fairly short prelude. So when I got to this point, the reason for the purple block is that I realized that I wasn't actually adding anything to the delay between measures by having more redstone wire. It was only the repeaters that were causing the noticeable delay. So that meant there was no reason to have the measures spread out quite as much as I did back here when I had started. Hence, I put in the purple blocks to designate for me when I've come to the end of a measure. That way, when I'm listening to it, I can come down and troubleshoot very quickly if I hear a problem in the notes. One other thing I'll show you before I just play it and we can see how it works. You'll notice over here that I decided that I didn't want to keep digging out all of the stone up above. There was no reason to do that because frankly I don't expect people to be down here and see the aesthetics or anything. So I just made sure to dig out above the top note block so that you can hear and see the note. Likewise, I didn't bother to remove the gravel. Normally I remove all gravel because I really despise having gravel and stuff that people are going to see. So, we'll run over here, press the button, and you can see how it works. And that's it. That's Chopin's Prelude in C minor. Hope you enjoyed that. If somebody else has a better way of making compact chords, I'd certainly love to see that as well. I think there's a lot of really cool potential for music in Minecraft. It'd be great if we saw some improvements to note blocks in some of the next releases, like the ability to set a sustain or perhaps go another 2 octaves in either direction. But even with the limitations that are on there today, there's actually just a lot of potential for some really cool stuff. So I hope you enjoyed this, and if it helps with any of your redstone work, that's great. Thanks.